Hello, my friends. Happy to be back at Eurovision.blog, and today I have a fantastic guest. It's Terry Gilgan from Switzerland. Terry Gilgan is an AI specialist, and he is the founder of the platform Machinery. And Terry, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Machinery. The stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Georg. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Thierry, founder and co-founder of Machina Labs, and we're building machinery, as you just said. My background mainly is in IT infrastructure and also a bit of development. My earlier career was in web development in my teens, actually, and then I moved on in my 20s into the infrastructure. I worked for a couple of big enterprises in leading positions, in data center operations and architecture. So I been leading a couple of big teams, done big implementations, and was a rather hands-on IT person. Got into blockchain early and the finance industry simply because of the interest on the technology and potential use cases. So the first impact was actually not the Bitcoin or the trade. In my case, I got to that in the second stage. And so I actually fell into the rabbit hole. And since I have quite some understanding of infrastructure and how businesses and enterprises need efficient and cost efficient, more specifically applications, I had issues with how the situation was when it came to trading, specifically at the beginning, digital assets. We're talking 5, 6 years ago. The landscape was not so intense as it is potentially today. Actually, that ended in me and a couple of friends starting to build a platform for both developing as well as testing and executing of algorithmic trading. Then this basically step by step evolved into a more, let's say, complete solution, because we found out that people do have, more issues than just the technology side, right? When it comes to trading, they also want to gather certain information that they need to take decisions. They need tools to make very well decisions in a short time based on huge amounts of information. And there we have seen quite a shift over the last years, as we all know, with, of course, AI. I think it's not that it has not been there already, of course, but the landscape with ChatGPT shifted because it became more touchable for most people. And our platform pretty much is a platform that allows you to work with algorithms on a really hands-on based situation where you want to know quickly what's going on and you want to get specific stuff done. So it's a platform that should reduce your time to get your information and potentially then also automate what you're doing. It's platform agnostic, it's industry agnostic, meaning that it could be potentially used in a variety of use cases and industries. However, we're a startup, so we're focusing right now very much on the finance industry. And so I'm going to show you a bit today how automated decision making could potentially look in the future.
That's really great. Terry, let's get a bit more into your platform. Yeah, you built what appears to be the only truly financial intelligence platform. How does Machinery's end-to-end automation save thousands of analyst hours compared to fragmented tools like SMP or AlphaSense?
Yes, I think the main big difference that there is that we are in a comparably simply to access situation with a lot of customizability along with it. What we bring today is extreme depth in data. So we have a lot of data in access that we do not only access like your normal chatbot, but that has already been analyzed and structured by actually service AI agents. So the quality of the data is different and also the amount of data. I'll give you an example. A chatbot would try and download something when like news articles the moment that you ask him a question. In this case, our platform continuously analyzes whatever interest field you have configured the system to do earlier, and therefore it has a much deeper understanding of all the context, and context is super important to take decisions, right? And there is a lot of information to digest, and the idea is that you do not need to spend maybe half an hour or an hour on looking on the situation of one asset type, but rather you have already up to the minute, up to date report that you can request, even with your own specifications if you wanted to, which really focuses on exactly that stuff, which always looks exactly the same way, which does not one time look like this, or the evaluation of a specific parameter is one time in one form and one time it's a bit another form, or in other words, sometimes good means good and another time good means very good, but you don't really know the difference because it has no structure and that stuff. So our system tries to get these jobs done very cleanly with very structured outputs. It tries to aggregate a lot of information from a variety of places, and that's not only when it comes to news, but also there's a lot of other content on the internet, and you want to access this potentially very easily. So we brought all of this together, along with, of course, the standard platform tools that you would expect a modern AI platform or algorithmic platform to support. But this comes in a very nice flavor because a lot of the convenient platforms that you see today, they are potentially somewhere in the cloud. You do not have 100% control on where your data is going, or a couple of other things as well. And I think the today's world, that's maybe not a positive situation, but it's a fact, right? We have a world where we have a lot of geopolitical shifts, and specifically when you have very sensible data, then the things actually are starting to be of matter. I mean, at some point, a situation might be good today, but then what happens next year when you have potentially a different party in the execution of a country's government, and then things could potentially look very different. And I think these are things that, both actually not only huge enterprises and governments are now starting to understand, but also more and more private people, because such data can be abused, right? And it's not something that you have a stomach feeling, and you have proof of many, many serious times, right? There is very public and cases that we all know and heard of, where we see that these things are actually problematic, not as long as everything goes good, but the moment where something goes really bad, these things actually become a real problem. So that's another part where we have by architecture taken care of. It's not only the time and speed that we save you potentially to acquire all that information and get it together in a useful way, and also the ground pillars to actually do more deep analytics also with other tools. But it's also that we have an architecture in place that is assured to be adaptable for you regulatory wise, compliance wise, to live up for the future, where you really know you have the tech stack under control as an enterprise as well, where okay, I hold all the control keys in my hand, and I'm not like relying on stuff where I only have a fraction of influence potentially. And these are considerations that we've all packed in the technology that we have built, right? And so it brings a lot of value in a lot of different segments of the value chain, right? From the beginning to end. And that's potentially another thing that differentiates our platform. Many platforms are taking care very nicely about a specific fraction of the value chain, while in our case, the system actually allows you a short fraction of time to gather the information that you want, structure it the way that makes sense for you, then actually analyze it to make some sense, find trends, dynamics, anomalies, run different AI models on top of and have then actually a UI where this is all presented, where I also can make this accessible for even myself with customizable dashboards, or more broadly in an organization, or even if you go really big, publish that automatically, build maybe a news platform or some other sort of intelligence platform that you would use in some sort for your business, right? So that's a 360 degrees situation that we rarely see, except with, of course, a couple of the really big international vendors. And I think that's a bit the differentiation that we have. We're Swiss, we're new, we're trying to be a clean technology company, providing the tools for you so that you can, at the end, get your job done more quickly and be assured that you have your stuff fully under control.
Terry, we will come back very soon to dashboards, usability, and UI. But now I want to come back to what you mentioned first, to the geopolitical shift. Now, more and more people recognize that security and safety is very important, especially security of their own data. At the latest hearing in the French government, Microsoft said if you put your data in a Microsoft data center in Europe, it is not guaranteed that the American FBI, CIA, or other organizations cannot access your data. So this is not secure. Data security is getting more and more important, and we have to take care about the data which are really stored in Europe at platforms which are owned by European companies. And because cloud is not so secure, is your platform available on-prem?
Yes, indeed. That's one of the main pillar stones. So we do not use any foreign software components that we do not have fully under control, but we do also allow you to install the platform in any flavor that you like, in any deployment scenario and any location, and make use of whatever capabilities that you have there. So that's a very nice advantage that you have towards most competitors in the field. Yeah, one of the very important features that we have built natively into the platform.
That's really great. Oh, that's really good news for many financial institutions and maybe also for governments that they can use your platform very, very securely. You mentioned dashboards, usability. Terry, is it possible to have a look on your platform to see what can be done with it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to share you a couple of first looks. So what I'm going to show you is the ongoing development state of our showcase platform. So this is adapted to financial use cases in
Okay.
a multitude of flavors.
So we're concentrating now on financial things to use your platform.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly. So that's in this specific case, but realistically, and I will go into that maybe a bit later once we've looked over the main features, we can look like a little bit in how the platform can be configured, and in there you will also understand, of course, you could adapt this logic to pretty much any industry or even specific use case, and that would allow you, of course, to be much more dynamic. However, the showcase platform is very much focused on things that are in the farthest sense finance related, of course.
Okay, perfect. Please, Harry, show us.
Wonderful. So let me give you a first quick overview of what we're going to look at. So our platform consists of multiple main use case modules. We have publishing and research module, we have a risk monitoring module, and we have the algorithmic trading module. On top of that, we also do have a smart agent universe and of course all the different backend functionality, low-code editors and whatnot, so that you can build the system and customize it to your respective needs. What we're going to look at right now is finance focus. What we're looking at today is our showcase platform. This one is focused on finance. As said earlier, our platform and systems can be fully adapted to different use cases if you go into the enterprise level versions. Of course, this is more like a retail view. Also, our platform supports or contains today 3 already existing use case modules. One is the research and publishing module, one is the risk monitoring module, and then we also have the algorithmic trading module. We're today going to focus on the first 2. So today what we're looking at is mainly aggregating information from multiple different places and then getting a deeper understanding of the trends and dynamics behind the data, and of course connect this to more intelligent agent reports using AI. So basically this all starts off, so you do have a bit of understanding what all of what I just said means, is that you can very easily, and I'm going to show you that a bit later, you can, if you have an enterprise level version of this, configure what kind of information you want to monitor in the internet. And this can be all types of content. It can not only be any public website, blogs, news, etc. It could be social media. It could be, of course, also stuff from a specific API that delivers specific content. And the research and publishing engine mainly looks at unstructured document type context, right? So this can, as I said, be news articles, blogs, it could be video transcriptions, it could be specific features from specific organizations, etc., website content in general. And the problem there is that all of this data comes very unstructured. So it will be a hard time to actually get useful information out of this simply, because what you usually get is a big blob of text and not much more, right? The idea of this system is that the system will not only help you to very easily get this information from the respective sources, but also it does some initial analytics for you that you can also customize. So what does that mean? When the system gets any type of a content, it will first of all try to determine what type of content am I looking at. And then based on that, it will also do more advanced analytics. It will try to find all entities mentioned in the document and the respective context. So what does that mean as a real example? It means I want to, for instance, not have a big text blob with a lot of information in there, but it would be nice if I had a field that shows me all the countries and how, for instance, these countries were mentioned in what context. But that would be also interesting for all the people mentioned in there. Specifically, when you want to mention and make then deeper analytics, such as sentiment analysis, of course, the sentiment for one person can be different in the same document than it could be for another person, because they could have different contexts. The example would be if you have a conviction of a criminal, that would potentially be very good for the lawyer who won the case, but potentially not so good, would not be so good for the criminal who got convicted, as well as the lawyer who lost the case, right? And potentially you would have a mention of the people that were impacted by this crime. They have a negative impact. So you see that there is a lot of different people with different, let's say, sentiments, right? It can be positive or negative. And that's a depth that you would want to understand. So the system will read out these entities for you. So it will find out where was this country, region, the actual place. It will try to find out all the people in there, assets that are mentioned, commodity, equities, and so forth, and organizations as well. And each of those with its relevance and context sentiment analysis. So as we just explained, we do not now only know who was mentioned, but also in what kind of context. So let's look at what that actually means if we are going a bit deeper. All right, so let's go deeper into an article example to look what this analysis actually means. And here we have, for instance, an article about Nintendo's expansion pack, which maintains a cult following despite its high cost. So the article exploring the enduring cult status of Nintendo's expansion pack 4 megabyte RAM module sold in the late 1990s for the Nintendo 64 console. And then we go deeper in, we see we have here a chart analysis. So we had mentioned Nintendo as a company and Japan as a country. And we see their respective sentiment analysis, right? While 1 is very positive and -1 is very negative. And on this side, we also see how many times something got mentioned. So we see if there are spikes in something, etc. And then going more deeper, we now know, okay, Nintendo was in this article mentioned 5 times at a very high relevance, with a sentiment which is very neutral from its language. The context of it was a expansion pack. It was about a status of a retro gaming pack, so nothing interesting. So that's correct. And then we have Japan, which is also neutral. Why? Because it is the Nintendo headquarters. It is not very relevant to anything else. And we have the equities of Nintendo Co. And this has also a neutral sentiment. Why? Because it does not really have a big impact on that respective equity. It's just like a general news that there is a big interest in this old expansion pack. But now let's go and look into an article which gives us a little bit more depth in terms of what happens. So here we have, for instance, and now let's go into a category where things easily look a little bit more difficult. So I have just moved in the war and armed conflicts category. And so we have a very fresh event that you potentially heard about, which is the war between Thailand and Cambodia. There is an article from this morning here. So we're going to watch this now and see, all right, there is the 4th day of fighting between Thailand and Cambodia. Through why? Because he's trying to mediate a ceasefire proposal and he has trade negotiations. On the other side, we have Hun Manet with a slightly negative, but it's still neutral. He's the Cambodian prime minister and he also wants to get a ceasefire coordination. On the other side, we have the countries. Thailand with 15 mentions. It has a negative sentiment. Why? Artillery fire, civilian displacement, border dispute. Cambodia, 14 mentions. Also very negative territorial aggression, temple attacks, refugee crisis. You have places. It's the Priya Vihar temple with 3 mentions, very negative. It's a UNESCO site, historical dispute, combat zone. So you see how deep the system actually goes in understanding sentiments. It's also tagging all of your relevant categories here. So in what categories does this context as a general context fit for later analytics? So this specific document fits into main categories, politics and governance, war and armed conflicts, subcategories, geopolitical conflicts, international relations, government policies. And that's the depth that you need if you want to understand more deeply what's actually going on, if you also want to understand context. But this also means that you will now be able to query different things and make comparisons as well. So for instance, we could now do the following. We could say, hey, I want to go into war and armed conflict. I'm going to put in here Thailand. Poof. And I'm going to put in potentially, sorry, wrong field. I need to go here. Going to add Cambodia. We could add the United States. And now we see, all right, so now we have here the charts of all of these involved countries, right? And we can now already start to make certain sense out of this. Because of course we see that in our system we have a lot of mentions about the United States continuously, so that's pretty normal. There is usually less news on the weekend than during the week. So that's why the mention is pretty much explained. But what we see interestingly is that our system did not have any news pretty much about these two countries until the very moment here on the 23rd of July. So that's exactly 4 days ago. As we know from this article, guess what happened here? This is the reporting that started in the news, right? So if you watch the numbers on the 23rd of July, our system has catched only 13 news for Cambodia and 3 for Thailand. The day before that, it was actually 0 for Cambodia and 5 for Thailand. While the jump to the 24th, it was 164 news for Cambodia as well as 177 news for Thailand. And now if you look at the corresponding sentiment table over here, what you're going to see is that until the 21st, all of this was pretty good. 22nd, a slight negative situation on Thailand, still everything is normal. And then on the 23rd, something is starting to happen. You see that Cambodia is substantially dropping down here, right? Immediately. So what we know now is that on this day, the reporting has substantially increased and it got a very negative impact as well. You see then both countries here are down here, right?
Yeah.
We're probably going to see it in the depth of this article here as well. But that's exactly now showing you, look, you can also do that for people, right? And now you could also see if corresponding currencies also have had an impact, right? So it would, for instance, be interesting to see, did we have an impact on currency A, B, C, or D, right?
Terry, it's
Yes.
scrolling a lot of information from the internet. If a financial institution is going to use your platform and they use information sources behind a paywall, is it also possible to include it?
Yes, absolutely. So maybe let's look into how simple it is actually to configure the depth of the system, right? So if you are a financial institution, you can just simply go and you are able to, in 2 steps, configure the system. First of all, you need to tell the system a little bit what's the depth, how you want to classify the documents that come in. So I give an example. When a document comes in and you want it to classify, for instance, cyber and infrastructure attacks and subcategories of it, then you need to create such a category and their corresponding subcategories. And for everything you configure here, every document will be checked. And if that category fits to the context and the content of this document, it will be tagged as we have seen earlier. So this is super easy to make. And then the second step is that you should configure your sources over here. I think we have a lot of sources. So here you can simply add RSS feeds of any type. There is in the advanced backend also the functionality to configure HTTP headers so that you can give the parameters for password protected sites along to the system. You can also generate RSS feeds from pages which would not give you an RSS feed. For instance, generate an RSS feed from a social media profile or from a very old website from a company where they release company news, but they don't give you an RSS feed and so forth. Or you could use any type of search query as well. We have our own search engine behind the system, which is made for access via AI agents. So basically, you can put in any term that you like, a company name, person name. You can tell it in what languages do you want to monitor that, and it will create such queries on multiple other search engines worldwide and create you a continuously updated RSS feed from that will then be here tracked continuously and the content is downloaded. As you can see here, we have a lot of sources where we monitor. The important thing is also maybe to say here, the system is not in that form stealing the content. We're not one-to-one copying this content of the other party. What we're doing is we're basically simulating a user which opens a browser, goes on the respective website, reads through the content and takes itself notes, right? We want to know a lot of details about it. We are not interested in what he writes a news article itself, right? So we are interested in the value, the nature and our own conclusions of that. And that's basically what the system stores away. And that's also why it's fully compliant if you configure that system that way to access information that you could also access in a human form. So that being said, yes, to answer your question more shortly, yes, you can do that. You can get all kinds of content, including password protected stuff and services that give you documents via some sort of an API.
Wow, that's really fantastic. So as sources, you can give a lot of RSS feeds, news platforms.
Yes.
Is it also possible to add Facebook or Reddit as a source?
Absolutely,
Okay.
you can do that. I actually believe that we have here a couple of ones configured. Let's see. I think at least. Let me go a bit down. So as you can see, yes, here. So we have YouTube from Brett King, you see. So this is the feed. I can go here, check the articles, and then here it says the video features King Tsui, Huawei's global digital finance CTO, discussing advancement in autonomous infrastructure, digital innovation, and whatnot. So yes, you can configure all kinds of social media feeds. Of course, there is, let's say, a little bit a depth to scraping social media. They do not necessarily like you to scrape in a huge scale. What I can tell about our system is it's highly sophisticated in terms of not being, kicked out of the, let's say, the still legal situation. You can use customized modules to adapt certain things also to very, let's say, difficult situations. But generally, what we can tell you is that if you have the corresponding infrastructure capabilities with our platform, you can scrape pretty much any content on the internet in any scale that you wanted to, right? So, and I'm really talking any scale. If you think about, so this is a single box unit. That could be clustered, so it can be run as microservices, but you can also join in together multiple systems on one decentralized database that gets fed. So technically, you can build your kind of own Google universe based on this platform capabilities, right? So we're talking here not a couple of thousands of articles per day. We're talking potentially in a small setup, a couple of 10,000s, in a big setup, a couple of 100,000s, and in a really big setup, I think the number is pretty much open to the top. You know what I'm trying to say. So it's really made for huge scale downloads and continuous downloads of all of that stuff.
And the system is scraping all the news platforms you specify before. And where will the data be stored?
So that's, if you're an enterprise, that's fully up to you. In the Showcase platform, everything resides on either Swiss or on German data centers. But as I said earlier, if you're an enterprise, you can decide everything fully yourself. So that means the information that the system collects and the own analytics, they can go onto any database that you want to in the end. Or more specifically, you can put our databases in any deployment where you want. So you can run this system behind your closed doors, have your own database server there, and have full control in your private cloud or a private data center. So this system really, that's what we said earlier, it's built from the ground up to guarantee that you know where your data is coming from, where it's going to, and how it looks like.
We can summarize, it is completely secure, it's almost real time, and what I can see here, the usability, it's really great and it is really easy to use. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so basically based on what you've just seen, there is really then a lot more cool stuff, because this is just like the base, right? So you need to have a certain depth in your analytics, and as we've just seen, the system gives us a much deeper view than what you would know from a normal news website or even other pages that do sentiment analytics, right? Our system really goes very, very deep. I will know the sentiments of a person in specific categories, so I can differentiate if a company has negative regulation news, it has negative finance news or negative news about the CEO. We had a couple of funny examples last week with the Andromeda CEO. Maybe you've seen that. So, of course, these are spikes that you would see here. And they're very funny, right? Because the sentiment shifts and the amount of mentions of such is really crazy. And so exactly this kind of stuff, it's like if your HR, for instance, would use our system as a ground system to monitor, key personnel's public perception, then the HR, of course, in this case, it was the HR boss, which is a problem by definition to be involved in such a case. But if you would be another person working along this respective HR person, you would probably not wake up the next morning or with the phone call from somebody else telling you that your boss has just made a really stupid thing. But you would actually have a system that the moment where the first couple of such posts pop up, you would get an alert telling you, hey, we have a context-grade problem on your actual CEO. That's really something you should look at right now and not in a couple of hours, because until then it has already fully escalated, right? And that's a depth that you can get with this system, which is ultimately very nice. But on top of that, you want to then potentially have different possibilities on how you look deeper at such companies, at the value behind these companies and whatnot, right? So we do combine all of the analytics and the financial information that we get into scorings that we produce, of course, and then we also give you all the financial information that you would know from platforms that have the deeper financial information available. So you will see price targets, prices over time. You have depth information about the management, all the respective charts that you want. All of this is highly customizable. So this is super interesting, of course, for any type of enterprise, but also retail people. You can really adjust any view fully in any way you want to really show what you want and not more and not less. You can choose from a big growing universe of widgets that you can add into these dashboards that allow you to really get the value out that you want, right? And see the stuff that you need and do not have to go for tons of news and whatnot to find out if this company would potentially be an interesting investment or not. But then the really cool stuff on top of that, and it also comes with a portfolio manager, so you can enter your assets, you can track your portfolio value, you will have news only to your portfolio, etc., and the respective industry and peers. But what's really cool is, and I think that's the biggest feature, is the difference that is kind of depth on the base data that we have. And we just said earlier, okay, right now the system is getting hundreds of thousands of entries of articles, documents, speeches, and YouTube videos and whatnot, social media posts together about a very specific area that you have configured, and it gives you all this depth of entity and sentiment and trend analytics. And it has all these financial numbers as well from the brokers and everything. So if you put all these nuts and bolts together and you combine this with the modern agentic world, then what you get is pretty interesting possibilities on the side of your research. So when we, for instance, go here, we say, okay, look, I'm interested in the last week of, for instance, Artis would be a Swiss company, right? And now this is maybe a big difference to what you see from ChatGPT. You can say, oh, look, I want to cover up to like 1,000 articles, right? That I want to get into analytics. And this is not just the last 1,000 articles, roughly about Novartis. So we're already talking about our whole analytics universe. So it will not now look at a stupid marketing campaign that is just run at the same time last week, which has no influence on the equity price, or other advertisements which have, no bigger character of importance, but it will be reduced to the categories that are relevant, like the financial aspects of the news about the company, right? So then it will get you for the last week potentially up to 1,000 relevant news about this company into the basically vector store database that then the client has access. And then you can also tell it like how many complex questions can you ask to answer context related information. I'm going to open another window to just execute one more smart agent from another world. We earlier said we also have a lot of other public information like company registers, all kinds of commercial register data, but also sanction lists, stuff like the Panama Papers, and then of course all the multi-language real-time news content that we get. So now the interesting thing is, what can you actually learn about a person or a company out of this? And so this is interesting because you can now go here and say, for instance, gonna go with him, Tidjane Thiam. He's a former Swiss banker, right? He worked with Credit Suisse. His nationality, I think he was actually a Frenchman. And then what kind of languages should be focused on doing the research? So probably English, French, and German. That would potentially be the most relevant languages for that person. I know that he's from an African country as well, but if you know it, you can add it, of course, as well. I think that's already enough information that we need to provide. But now the agent is going through all of this data universe and this real-time information that we have. As I said, it's going to take up to 6-7 minutes to compute one such report. And what is the big difference between these reports and what you would know from what a Perplexity does or a Claude for Finance? So the big difference here is, first of all, the data here has already been going through some sort of a structuring, right? So we are now not accessing news article as blobs. As said earlier, we have a certain depth of understanding. So we can send to the model much more relevant information. And as I said earlier, we do not send it advertisements where this company is just mentioned. We send it only the relevant context, right? And the context is also structured, so we can send for each fraction of information, or for each document, we can send it a fraction of actual data in comparison to the whole article, but this data is much more relevant because it is structured, right? It is very clear, look, this person has this context and that's why it's negative, right? And so that's a much more high quality analytics of the situation than if you have all this noise in between. And then the second thing is, in the world where you can just chat to the agent, it always, the value that you get out of it depends also a bit on your input, right? If you are lazy formulating your prompt, you will actually end up getting potentially a lazy answer even on a very capable system. You get the point. So even Claude for Finance in some cases would just forget to do one very obvious thing. Why? Because you just never asked for it, right? But you should do it if you run this and that computation. I'm not saying that it does these issues, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're very intelligent, but the point is you do not necessarily actually know as a user in that very moment. And I think that is the big main difference to the smart agents here. They have a very clean process for the different agents. So we know a risk agent should do this, and that check, and this, and that should be taken care of, and there is this, and that edge case. And the same thing for other reports. If you have an equity report, you would also not want the LLM to determine what specific market price activities mean. but you would want an algorithm which is specialized to analyze market trends and not an LLM-based algorithm, that being said, or a model that's actually trained to watch stock prices and order books, right? Or, do technical indicator calculations and then give you back the learnings that it has from executing its process. And what you get out of it is a much, much more comprehensive actually quality, because this is not an LLM interpreting numbers. It is an algorithm made for it, doing this number crunching, giving very clean technical results out of it. And then you have an LLM that makes basically only the summarization of these results, right? So it's not the LLM that actually gets asked, what does this price curve mean on the market? But it's highly specialized algorithms that will tell that to the LLM, and the LLM just has to put your executive summary together and give you the output. And that's basically the key magic, how you get a much deeper kind of a data. And so here, as you can see, we have now executed our news research report over the last week with up to 1,000 articles and 7 semantic searches on Novartis. You can see here, it confirms the research period. It's from 20th July to the 27th July. We have a total of 162 articles that were deemed relevant in that time frame and which were taken into the analysis. You see, we have a nice executive summary putting us together exactly what has happened last week. I will not read it down to you. I'm happy to share this also with you. I will take a copy of the report and send it to you for reference. And then you see here I have the links to the most important news. But just grasp this, the difference is we've seen 7 minutes, we have just gone through a data universe of 162 documents, right? That's the depth of data that we have just looked at. And that, of course, it's, as a human, you will never read 162 documents in 5 minutes and make some actual useful conclusions. This is exactly doing that. Gives you here also the overview. You see that it also tells you the importance. So this is really the most important news of that time frame, right? Not some other stuff. And that's important. Then here we have actionable insights. What does it mean? Like, hey, look, there is this, and that subject that you should watch in terms of this company, because here we have Novartis CEO warns of market withdrawals for drugs unless Europe pricing reforms are implemented, right? So you see, this is really hands-on. This is really giving you right away actionable things. Hey, look, this is the one thing where you actually should do something. The rest is informational, but this has some actual impact. And here we see the same thing, leverage Novartis' recent innovation and partnership momentum, notably to the Matchpoint deal, when evaluating long-term value as R&D pipeline strength may buffer short-term regulatory volatility. So you see, this is really the two hands-on things that you need to know for last week is these two items. Then you see also a bit of additional depth, what companies have been mentioned very often in this data, along with Novartis. So we see Roche and Matchpoint Therapeutics. Matchpoint was a successful acquisition, as we just learned. Roche is, one of the main competitors. Top people, mainly the CEO, was mentioned a lot of times in this last week. And then we have the top countries, Switzerland, United States, works well because main business lines and probably the United States, the place of the acquisition. You see here the top contexts. So that's again, what is the top content of that news in detail, not the actionable points, but the top content, two different things. We have here our sentiment analysis about the company. So what of this had what impact? We have a little risk assessment down here where we see, okay, look, this is the significant stuff when it comes to the volatility and geopolitical perspective of this. And now the last interesting point is we get a decision trace. So now we get to know from the system, hey, look, what did I actually do? I checked for earnings call reactions, right? With Novartis earnings call reaction as a query between this and that time. I then searched for Novartis risk factors. I watched for Novartis regulatory outlook, Novartis market forecast, etc., etc., etc. The system also in the backend logs any tool involved and all of that, each step that was taken, and it makes sure that this quality and the structure that you just see in every report you do when you next week come back or tomorrow, the report will not look different. So you will have also a comparison situation as well. So this is always structured the same way. If we look, what does that mean for reviewing a person? And this is going a bit deeper into the rabbit hole. You will see here, it found the person, because full name we have here, date of birth. Ah, look, he's French and Ivorian, to get back to what is his second nationality. We have the place of birth. He was born in the Côte d'Ivoire. And then who is he? A businessman, executive chairman of Freedom Acquisition Corp at the moment. Industry, financial services, primary address, etc. You have a lot of details. Here you have your subject basis, what he's doing right now, then the full executive summary. So here you see what he's doing right now. He is the chairman of Freedom Acquisition Corp, and he's also not listed as a PEP. He's living in France, etc. And then the executive summary tells you, hey, he's the former CEO of Credit Suisse, right? From then to then, and really over all his career, the most important parts. Then you have here the timeline. What did he do, right? When did he got born? When did he serve as what, right? What did he actually do in the different parts of his career? What is his corporate main network? And now, as you see, there is another company here which is called Prudential and so forth. So you really see
So here you get the full summary of a person.
You get pretty much everything as we see that we have a full media overview. Who is he involved with? What is the most relevant stuff? Here we see linked entity, Axel Peter Lehmann, Credit Suisse Group.
So this is really very important for the big enterprises to see what their C-level is doing. And also for the portfolio managers to see real time what happens where in the world with the geopolitical situations, with financial and economic situations. That's really great. You mentioned also that this has a big advantage to other LLMs who use predefined sources. You don't have the hallucination here, and working with unstructured data gives much better result. It is more complicated, but it gives a better result at the end. Is the summary correct?
That's 100% correct. You basically reduce everything you put into the very relevant stuff because you did already clean it up. And by that, you will get such an explosion in quality. And of course, the other thing is putting structured outputs. It's also not one LLM that answers here. We have a combination of LLMs, of course, and other types of algorithms behind these actual agents. We do not only have the agents that you run on demand, but also the one that just goes through, this news content and does the job in hundreds of thousands per day. And so you can really make the best, let's say, out of efficiency, because why does this matter? The quality goes up, but also the cost goes down, right? If you have new regulations right now, so that's actually super important. Just very freshly, we have new regulations in place in Switzerland. The FINMA now asks you to not only do once a year a monitoring of your risky customers as a financial institution, you should do it continuously. They said a real-time monitoring is the state of the art. But that's a big difference right now. Most financial institutions still have a person that goes there and checks a specific database for stuff, maybe does a Google search as well. And then that's it, and it's not going to be touched for a long while again. Maybe also in most cases, there's not even a holistic approach on what information out of this database are we actually all going to look at, and how do we potentially actually evaluate that, right? So it's not like a structured process in many cases. I'm not saying everywhere, of course, but that's a fact. And here you have a fully structured process. It's a fully trackable, accountable process, and it's reduced to the max. So ultimately, the same person in your risk assessment will now not do maybe 2 or 3 assessments a day manually, but he would run potentially 100 reports specifically on that day in depth and know exactly what's going on. But at the same time, he also has another 10,000 customers in monitoring, which means that if some of these customers have a flag today, I will see that while drinking my early morning coffee.
So Terry, we have seen how it works greatly, and your text-to-strategy solution. This is a fantastic conversion. And does this make the traditional quant platforms obsolete?
Well, I think, the traditional quant platforms, they will evolve as well. And of course, some of them have at least partially features that we have. But the rabbit hole goes a bit deeper than that, right? The thing is that the world and technology is right now shifting a lot. Both the technology becomes stronger, more efficient, but at the same time, geopolitical and compliance regulation situation also becomes more challenging. Our platform lives fully up to this. As said, institutions have full guarantee over their data sovereignty. And I think that's one of the key aspects. And it's combined with, not only the best possible quality that you can get out of such systems, but this along with the best cost efficiency. So we're talking at a scale less than what you're known from other like chatbot bots or other kind of automated decision-making platforms in the forest sense when you look at our entry-level pricing. So don't get me wrong, I do not think they lose their right of existence fully. They potentially do some jobs really well. But if you want to have a solution that can go far beyond what they offer you today, where you can put an idea into place that they do not offer you potentially in minutes and execute it and really have advantage on the markets and know stuff earlier than others, I think then you need a platform that is made for exactly that and not for any other kind of approach. And that's what we have built, right? And in other words, if you know what you're gonna want to look for, you will not find a tool where you can do this more quickly, more efficiently, and with a better quality than what we do at the moment.
That's really great. That's great. Terry, thanks a lot for the very good insights you gave us. The platform, it's really fantastic. You can do really a lot. It's really fantastic for financial institutions, portfolio managers, banks, insurance companies, and all different companies, and also for private people. So, Terry, now we are coming to the most important question on this channel. What is your vision?
I've never been somewhat with small dreams or small visions. The platform that we have is built to, at least for the next 20 years, live up to the technology changes and what happens in the industry as we think it happens based on our experience, which differentiates it from a lot of the trending items that are out there. And what that actually means, if you want to visualize this, the idea of what we do today in the financial industry can be copied pretty much to any industry that there is and to any combination of it. People can build solutions that there is and to any combination of it. People can build solutions based on all the intelligence that we have themselves. They can even resell them within the ecosystem of machinery, which means that what we're looking at is hopefully not only one tree in the desert, but merely a growing ecosystem of trees that also nurture each other's, right, with what happens in the different segments. And ultimately that should lead to one of Europe's, if not the most strong Europe hyperscaler with a focus on any approach in AI.
Wow, that's really great.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot, Terry. I would like to give you some rapid fire questions to finalize this fantastic interview.
Yes,
Are
absolutely.
you ready, Terry?
Shoot.
Bloomberg or machinery? Who
Machinery.
wins in 5 years? Machinery, perfect. One feature you would steal from S&P Capital IQ.
Nothing.
Most ridiculous use case someone's built with your API?
Give me a second to think. I actually made a funny bot, which is a very stinky system administrator that manages the actual configuration for the news platform. It's very funny. So you can tell it how to basically monitor your system, but it will have a very grumpy character, just like Marvin, and he does want to see the world burn a little bit.
Scariest moment building machinery? Server crash or investor meeting?
None of them, actually. Scariest moment was roughly a year ago when I made one of our agents speak the first time. And instead of chatting with my agents very late at night, I started speaking with them and having conversations with multiple virtual people in the room. And my wife didn't like that at all.
Basel, Switzerland. Is it a fintech paradise or a regulatory nightmare?
I would want it to not be a regulatory nightmare. And I think that it's on the way to be better, but it has a lot to learn.
Next country you would conquering after Switzerland?
Germany.
Your AI just flagged a billionaire as very high risk. Call them?
Well, you know, today's world doesn't like too much if you tell it the truth, so I rather stick the truth and the impression to my customers.
Coffee consumed building machinery. Liters or swimming pools?
Oil tankers.
Biggest lie in fintech marketing today.
AI.
Most overrated financial metric everyone tracked.
Time to unicorn.
That's fantastic. And you're really on the track to it, Terry.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. That was really fantastic to have you here on stage. And yeah, I wish you all the best, and
Thank
thanks
you
for
very
your
much,
time.
Georg.
I hope to see you
It's been an
soon again in
absolute
person.
pleasure. And for the audience, if you're interested to check out what we're doing, the waitlist of machinery is opening up soon. We will notify on social media, and we all welcome you very much to come join the shadow launch on the waitlist to get very early access, actually for free, including credits to test pretty much all parts of the system. Happy to see you all on the platform.
That's great.
Thank you very much. Have
Thanks
a
a
good
lot,
time.
Terry.
Bye, Georg.